The British, cooped up within Boston, faced dwindling supplies. Taking the higher ground both north and south of the city on a peninsula will give them a tactical advantage. General Burgoyne.
The heights, both north and south, in the soldiers' phrase, command the town. That is, give an opportunity of erecting batteries above any that you can make against them, and consequently are much more advantageous. It was absolutely necessary we should make ourselves masters of these heights.
On June 13th, word reaches the Colonials that the British plan to take both hills. 3 nights later, Colonel William Prescott, Major General Putnam, Engineer Captain Richard Gridley, and 1,200 Colonial militiamen occupy and establish defenses on the high points of Breed's Hill and the adjacent Bunker Hill. Colonel Prescott.
In the evening, I received orders to march to Breed's Hill in Charlestown with a party of about 1,000 men, consisting of 300 of my own regiment, Colonel Bridge and Lieutenant Breckett, with a detachment of theirs, and 200 Connecticut forces commanded by Captain Knowlton. We arrived at the spot. The lines were drawn by the engineer, and we began the entrenchment about 12 o'clock, and plying the work with all possible expedition till just before sunrising.
They begin work on Breed's Hill, a square 130 feet across. Each side is dug with ditches and earthen walls. The 6-foot-high walls have a raised wooden platform to allow soldiers cover while they fire over the side. At 4 a.m. the next morning, the British warship, the HMS Lively, notices the preparations on Breed's Hill and fires. Later that morning, General Gage gives the official order to turn all 128 naval guns and the additional batteries on the Colonials. The high ground keeps the armaments from making much of an impact. It alerts Prescott to the vulnerability of his redoubt, and he orders breastwork built along the east side, reinforced with fence rails and hay. Major General William Howe and Brigadier General Robert Piggott assembled 2,200 redcoats to traverse the harbor to the Charlestown Peninsula and begin the march up Breed's Hill. Gage had been warned that Colonel Prescott would fight to the gates of hell. His men are about to learn how true that statement is. It is 2 o'clock when they begin landing. Arriving reinforcements and other colonial soldiers, victims of their own experience, fail to form a united front. General Prescott.
About 2 o'clock in the afternoon on the 17th, the enemy began to land a northeasterly point from the fort, and I ordered the train with 2 field pieces to go and oppose them, and the Connecticut forces to support. But the train marched a different course, and I believe those sent to their support followed. I suppose to Bunker Hill.
The battle begins with the approaching redcoats converging on the fort. Hoping to kill colonial snipers from the nearby village of Charlestown, the British set it aflame.
I was left with perhaps 150 men in the fort. The enemy advanced and fired very hotly on the fort, and meeting with a warm reception, there was a very smart firing on both sides.
Low on ammunition, the order, "Don't fire until you see the whites of their eyes," is given to the colonial army. The redcoats begin their uphill march. They are a formidable, highly trained army, superior in number to the ragtag militia of 2,400. They near the crest of the hill, and the Continentals fire. It causes an immediate retreat.
After a considerable time finding our ammunition was almost spent, I commanded a cessation till the enemy advanced within 30 yards, when we gave them such a hot fire that they were obliged to retire nearly 150 yards before they could rally and come again to the attack.
General Burgoyne.
Howe's disposition was exceedingly soldier-like. In my opinion, it was perfect. As his first arm advanced up the hill, they met with 1,000 impediments from strong fences and were much exposed. They were also exceedingly hurt by musketry from Charlestown, though Clinton and I did not perceive it till Howe sent us word by a boat and desired us to set fire to the town, which was immediately done. We threw a parcel of shells, and the whole was instantly in flames. One battery afterwards kept an incessant fire on the heights. It was seconded by a number of frigates, floating batteries, and one ship of the line.
Once more, the Redcoats attack, and once more, they are repelled.
And now ensued one of the greatest scenes of war that can be conceived. If we look to the height, Howe's corps ascending the hill in the face of entrenchments and in a very disadvantageous ground was much engaged, and to the left the enemy pouring in fresh troops by thousands over the land, and in the arm of the sea our ships and floating batteries cannonading them.
By this time, the Continental's ammunition reserves are almost tapped dry. When the enemy marches up a third time, they breach the fortifications and engage in vicious hand-to-hand combat. Prescott and his men are forced to retreat, with the British taking the hills and the peninsula. Colonel Prescott.
The enemy, being numerous, surrounded our little fort and began to mount our lines and enter the fort with their bayonets. We was obliged to retreat through them while they kept up as hot a fire as it was possible for them to make. We, having very few bayonets, could make no resistance.
General Joseph Warren, who had volunteered to serve under Prescott's command, was killed by a musket ball to the head during the retreat. The Redcoats strip him of his clothing, bayonet his body repeatedly, and discard his body. His corpse is recovered 10 months later by the general's brothers and Paul Revere. But the Battle of Bunker Hill is not an entire loss for the Continental Army. They only suffer 450 casualties, with 115 dead, while the British suffer 1,054 casualties, including 226 killed. General Burgoyne.
The day ended with glory, and the success was most important, considering the ascendancy it gave the regular troops, but the loss was uncommon in officers for the numbers engaged.
It may be a strategic loss, but it is a morale booster for the Patriots. A month earlier in Philadelphia, the Second Continental Congress began their session.